Greetings everyone, and welcome to another special timey-wimey Tuesday Closer Look. So today we're going to be taking a look at a rather large collection that I did a couple of updates showing the latest editions I got, and I realized when I got those editions it actually completed the collection. I have the whole set now. And, well, I thought, what better subject for a closer look? So what am I talking about? Well, very interesting series of DVDs. It goes by the title of The Doctors. Now what The Doctors is it's a series of compilation DVDs of an interview series called Mythmakers that was produced, well, it started in 1984 and it's actually still going today. I just found out this fairly recently. They're still doing new editions every so often. But originally it was put out essentially as a monthly series of interviews with cast, crew, behind-the-scenes people and stuff who worked on the original classic series of Doctor Who. And then it also branched out to include other British science fiction series alumni as well. So Mythmakers, which, yes, is titled after the William Hartnell story of the same name, was originally available only through direct mail order, and they would have ads for it in Doctor Who magazine. Here's an ad for one of them right here, featuring Nicholas Courtney, the Brigadier himself. Yeah, this is when it was just starting, actually. So, they would originally offer them on VHS, later offer them on DVD, but here's the kicker. You had to buy them one episode at a time. Yeah, you got one interview per tape. Now, they're about an hour long, so cool, but, I mean, you're looking at about $20 a tape back then, and then about the same price for the DVDs when they switched over to DVD. So these compilations were an absolute godsend for people like me who had always seen those ads in the magazines but was never able to get the tapes. Plus, I think at the time they were only available in PAL format anyway, so I would have needed like a multi-standard VCR to even be able to play them. So it was great to find out that they had put out these wonderful compilations, and each compilation has 5, 6, sometimes 7 of the Mythmakers episodes on each set. So I was originally made aware of these collections by JetBlast68, who, if you watch my package opening videos, may recall he sent me a bunch of them over the course of several packages. And then more recently, Reeltime Pictures, the company owned by Keith Barnfather and Nicholas Briggs, who does the Mythmakers series, had a big fire sale on all their remaining stock where they were offering each of them for about £3 or £4 a piece. That amounts to about $6 to $8 Canadian. So yeah, I just happened to have a bunch of money at the time, so I went straight to the website, went through the whole set, and found every single volume that I needed, and was able to fill in all the gaps in the collection. And I'm glad I did. Because I hate to say, as much as I'm hyping this up, and you're probably all like, wow, that sounds great, I'd love to get that collection. Yeah, I guess the fire sale was like a last chance before they're gone kind of thing, because I went to their website the other day and there isn't a single volume of the Doctors to be found anywhere. So I don't know if it was just something they did maybe for the 50th anniversary and then ended it now shortly after the 60th. I don't know, but it seems like it was a very limited time thing, and you just had to get them before they were gone. So, huge shout out and thanks to JetBlast68 for sending me the volumes he did over the course of those packages, and another huge shout out to JetBlast68 for letting me know about the fire sale, because honestly, if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have a single one of them on my shelf. And I gotta say, as a Doctor Who fan, these collections of interviews are absolute gold, especially since they've been going for so long. You have a lot of archival interviews there with people who were no longer with us, and some of whom didn't really do a lot of interviews and such, other than occasionally one for maybe Doctor Who magazine or what have you. So it's really great to be able to see a lot of these great old talents that we remember from the olden days of Doctor Who talking about their experiences on the show. So, even though we can't get them anymore, I thought you'd be interested to see kind of what's on all of them and what they're all about. So that's what we're going to take a look at in today's Closer Look. Yeah, we're going to look at the whole darn collection, so I can't even hazard a guess how long this video is going to be. Honestly, there's not a lot to look at on each one. I mean, you got the front cover, you got the back cover, and then we'll take a look at the discs and just kind of see which interviews are on each one. But yeah, if you're curious as to how many episodes of Mythmakers they re-released across this set, I did a count just before filming this video. 144 episodes. So this set, while it looks quite impressive on the shelf, is nowhere near as much shelf space as the VHS editions would have taken up, let me tell you, or even the individual DVD editions. So 144 episodes about Doctor Who stuff, and then they also put out one of Blake 7, and there's 7 interviews on this, appropriately enough. And you know what, we'll throw that one into the mix as well, because why not? It's another set of Mythmakers episodes, right? Alrighty, so The Doctors, aka the Mythmakers collection, today on A Closer Look on the Multimedia Chronicles. Okay, so I basically have the collection organized in order of doctor. So we're starting at, of course, Doctor number 1, William Hartnell. Now, these, of course, were done years after he passed away, so sadly we do not have a big in-depth interview with the man himself, but how wonderful would that have been? So, quite nice. You can see there it just gives you a quick rundown on who we've got, and then if we open it up, you can actually see how it all breaks down. So we have an introduction by Keith Barnfather and Nicholas Briggs themselves, where they kind of give a little breakdown and some little behind-the-scenes stories about doing the interviews. And that introduction is usually, those intros are typically like 20-30 minutes, so they're quite jam-packed full of info. So here we've got the original TARDIS team. We have William Hartnell. That is a tribute video. And then we have Carol Ann Ford, Jacqueline Hill, William Russell, Peter Purvis, and Jackie Lane. Very nice. So a very good start, representing the early days of Doctor Who. So then we have the first of several supplemental volumes, and I just kind of slide these in between each Doctor, because they are relevant to those eras. So we have the William Hartnell years behind the scenes. So these volumes are typically with crew members and, you know, not the cast, but the people who helped make the show happen behind the scenes. So here we have interviews with Verity Lambert herself. Yes, the lady herself, without whom Doctor Who would not exist. Waris Hussein, who is, of course, the director of the very first ever Doctor Who story. Great stuff. Those two are always interesting to listen to in interviews. I've seen quite a few interviews with them over the years. And then we have Donald Tosh, the John Wiles team, Tristram Carey, who I mentioned in the update video, did a whole bunch of scores for Doctor Who all the way through the John Pertwee era. And then Flight Through Eternity, the Three Doctors, Volume 1. So that is a special presentation featuring a whole bunch of Doctor Who alumni giving their reminiscences and behind-the-scenes stories. And next up, we have the Pat Troughton years. Yes, so entering into the second Doctor's era. Very nice. And then if we take a look inside, just spin these around there. We have, I don't know why they just went with the last names here. We got Troughton, Wills, Craze, Hines, Watling, and Padbury. Let me see if I can remember all their names. Patrick Troughton, that is also another tribute video because this was done after he passed away. Annika Wills, Michael Craze, Fraser Hines, Deborah Watling, and Wendy Padbury. There we go. So all the various companions and the man himself. And then the Pat Troughton years were quite influential in the history of Doctor Who. So we have Behind the Scenes Volume 1 of 2. So again, we get a whole bunch of folks who helped make the magic happen behind the camera. And if we open it up, we have Sean Sutton, Victor Pemberton, Derek Sherwin, the Innes Lloyd team, Flight Through Eternity, The 60s, Volumes 1 and 2. So that's when they mention on the back a special presentation, that's the special presentation that they're talking about. So there's like a whole bunch of people in those who worked on the show back in the day. So that's pretty cool. Those are always fun to see. And then we have, of course, the Pat Troughton Years, Behind the Scenes, Volume 2. Great stuff. And there we go. And once again, we have a special presentation on here. Actually, a couple of special presentations. We have Derek Martinez, Douglas Camfield, and then The Directors, Volume 2. Where's Volume 1? Probably on one of the other discs. We'll keep an eye out for that one. Barry Newberry, the Peter Bryant team, and Flight Through Eternity, The 60s, Volume 3. So there's like series within series within series of stuff here. So it's definitely worth tracking down all of them to get all the bits and pieces of these ongoing collections. Then, of course, we have the Jon Pertwee years. Needless to say, lots of great interviews on this one, including with the man himself. Great stuff. And here we go. Well, you should know all of these names. We have Jon Pertwee, Katie Manning, Carolyn John, Nicholas Courtney, Richard Franklin, and John Levine. I like how we have all the unit team on one disc, and then we have the Doctor and his two primary companions, Joe Grant and Liz Shaw. There, very nice. I'm a huge fan of the 70s era, so that was, I think, the first disc I dove into. Then we have Behind the Scenes Volume 1 for the Jon Pertwee years. Very nice. And looking inside, oh, we have a whole bunch of like special presentations here. A full disc with a massive 2-part interview with Barry Letts and Terrence Dix. Like, if you know your Doctor Who people, those two gentlemen are absolute legends. Barry Letts was the producer through most of Jon Pertwee's era and helped to shape a lot of the tone of the 70s stories that we love so much. Terrence Dix, of course, not only wrote a whole bunch of stories, he was also the story editor for a while, and of course wrote more of the Target novelizations than any other single person. And then we have Dan Houghton, The Directors, Volume 1. There we go. And then we have Flight Through Eternity, The Three Doctors, Volume 3. And there we go. Then we have Behind the Scenes, Volume 2 for the Jon Pertwee years. There we go. And in this one, just give that a little... There, so a little spin there. We have Bob Baker and Dave Martin, who wrote a number of stories. Robert Sloman, Louis Marks, actually they were all writers. Tim Combe, Dudley Simpson, legendary Doctor Who music composer, did so much of the music in the 70s. And then Flight Through Eternity, The Three Doctors, Volume 2. Well, that's interesting. Why'd they put Volume 2 on this one, but Volume 3 on this one? I don't know. You'd think they would have done it the other way around. Anyway, take note of that if you want to watch those, specials in order. Next up, as I'm sure you can imagine, quite a few interviews for this era. We have the Tom Baker years. Yes, and there he is, the man, the myth, the legend himself. Let's take a quick peek at the back. Very nice. And if we open it up, and there we go. So we got an interview with the man himself, and with Elizabeth Sladen, who is, of course, Sarah Jane Smith. Ian Marter, that's really cool that they actually got a sit-down interview with Ian Marter, because he actually passed away quite young. I think he was only in his 40s. So it's great that they managed to get an interview with him. And then we have Louise Jameson, who was, of course, Leela, Mary Tam, who was Romana 1 during the Key to Time saga, and John Leeson, who was, of course, the voice of K9. And there you go. So next up, we, of course, have Behind the Scenes, Volume 1 from the Tom Baker years. There we go. Very nice. So on this one, we have Graham Williams, who was, of course, the producer during several seasons of his era. David Fisher, Andrew Smith, June Hudson, the Genesis of the Daleks team. That is really cool. Who's on that one? Yeah, we have Michael Wisher, who was Davros, Peter Miles, who was Nider, Roy Skelton, who was the voices of the Daleks, along with Arthur Cox, Terrence Denville, David Garfield, and David Weston. So it's basically a big Genesis of the Daleks reunion. Very cool. Primarily the villains from the sound of it. But yeah, that's going to be a fun one. And then we have Flight Through Eternity, The Three Doctors, Volume 4. Why is the Three Doctors on the Fourth Doctor? Well, I have no idea. I'm not going to complain. I'm sure those are wonderful. And always nice to have more parts of those ongoing series of documentaries. And next up we have Behind the Scenes Volume 2 for the Tom Baker years. And there we go. And on this one, we have Philip Hinchcliffe, who is one of the fan favorite producers for sure. One of the all-time great showrunners, right up there with Barry Letts. Actually, he took over from Barry Letts after he left, and gave us some of the finest seasons of Who from the 70s. We've got Christopher H. Bidmead, who actually wrote a number of stories and actually wrote a lot of his own science fiction stuff as well. John Black, Matt Irvine, the costume design team, and the music and sound team. So quite a few people on those. If you look at the back there, it actually gives you a quick little list of who's in those. Very cool. Is it Dudley Simpson? Yeah, Dudley Simpson and Dick Mills on the music and sound team. Those guys are freaking legends. And then we have the Peter Davison years. There we go. And this, I think, has pretty much everybody on it who was on the TARDIS team. So, let's get a little spin around there. We have the Peter Davison team, Volume 1, which is, I guess, a whole bunch of them together doing a group interview. Janet Fielding, Sarah Sutton, of course, Tegan and Nissa. And then the Peter Davison team, Volume 2. I think, actually, this is convention footage, so it's them at various conventions. That's another thing that Reeltime Pictures did, is a whole bunch of documentaries about conventions. Like, they've got a whole series of documentaries about the Panopticon conventions, one of the big Doctor Who conventions they did for a number of years. Yeah, I definitely need to pick those ones up. Then we got Matthew Waterhouse, of course, Adric, Mark Strickson, who was, of course, Turlough, and Anthony Ainley, yes, who was the main master from when I was originally watching it. Now, I guess the first time I saw the master was the so-called Crispy Master from The Deadly Assassin, and then later from The Keeper of Troughton. But throughout most of the, throughout the pretty much the entirety of the 80s up until the end of the original series, Anthony Ainley was the master, and he was wonderful. Then we have the Peter Davison years behind the scenes. As you can probably tell, this is going to be a long one. We're only about a third of the way through the collection so far. And there we go. So if we take a look. So here we have Stephen Gallagher, Barbara Clegg, Peter Grimwade, Graham Harper, Margot Hayhoe, and Dick Mills again. There we go. Very nice. I recognize most of these names. It's just some of them I can't fully place because, you know, they're on the crew and such. But I recognize most of them, as I'm sure most of you do as well if you're familiar with the 70s and 80s eras. And then we have the Colin Baker years. There we go. Very nice. Yeah, he really got shafted by the BBC, I gotta say. But, you know, I think they more than made up for it with the Big Finish audio adventures. They finally got to play out his Doctor's arc the way they'd always wanted to. So, we got interviews with Colin Baker, Sixie himself, Nicola Bryant, of course, Perry, Bonnie Langford, Mel, Michael Jaston, the Valliard, and John Nathan Turner. John Nathan Turner, who was the showrunner for a good number of years, from Tom Baker's last season right until the end of the classic series. Really interesting guy, especially to listen to, and he loved the show. And actually, he's one of the reasons it stayed on as long as it did, after it was kind of, on the chopping block, or, under heavier scrutiny from the powers that be at the BBC. And then, of course, Eric Sayward, who wrote some outstanding stories, and also some of the more violent stories that got them in a lot of trouble with Mary Whitehouse and such. But, yeah, great stuff. And then we have the Colin Baker years behind the scenes. And there we go. And here we have Chris Clough, who is a director I'm familiar with, mainly through the Making of Doctor Who special during the 7th Doctor's 25th anniversary story, Silver Nemesis. Matthew Robinson, Dominic Glynn, who did some terrific music, Wally K. Daly, who wrote at least a couple of stories. I have the novelization of The Ultimate Foe, which he wrote, which was one of the stories from the aborted season 23. I actually got one autographed by him, too. That's pretty cool. That was sent to me by a viewer. Philip Martin and Glenn McCoy. And there we go. And then next up, we have, of course, the Sylvester McCoy years. Yes, the 7th Doctor himself. And there we go. You can probably guess who's going to be on this one. Yep, we have Sylvester McCoy, the 7th Doctor, Sophie Aldred, Ace, of course, Lisa Bowerman, who played Bernice Summerfield, or Benny, in quite a number of audio adventures, Angela Bruce, Jessica Martin, and Andrew Cartmel. Andrew Cartmel was the main story editor for that era, and was kind of instrumental in shaping the tone of the last few seasons of the series, the so-called Cartmel master plan, which I'm sure he probably talks about in that interview. It's where they introduced, tried to reintroduce more mystery into the character of the Doctor and so forth, and made things a little darker again after being a little too light in Sylvester's first season. And here we have the behind-the-scenes edition for the Sylvester McCoy years. And there we go. And here we have... there we go. We have Ben Aronovich, who actually wrote a couple of excellent stories, Remembrance of the Daleks and Battlefield. We have Ian Briggs, Stephen Wyatt, Andrew Morgan, Mike Tucker, and musician extraordinaire, Kev McCullough. Yeah, speaking of Remembrance of the Daleks, he wrote the score for that, and that's one of my favorite scores from this era of Doctor Who. Great stuff. Then, oh yes, they didn't leave him out. We have the Paul McGann years. Well, years. I don't know how much this dives into his audio adventures, which has been years. But on screen, we of course only had the TV movie, and more recently, for the 50th anniversary, we had the short episode that he did. But this one primarily focuses on the cast and crew of the TV movie. So we take a look. We have lovely sit-down interviews with Paul McGann himself, Daphne Ashbrook, Yee So, Eric Roberts. Pretty cool they got him. He's actually a pretty big star these days. Well, for a long time. Philip Siegel and Jeffrey Sachs. So there you go. So essentially we have the principal cast, the producer, and the director. So everything you ever wanted to know about the TV movie, but we're afraid to ask. Next up, a pretty neat supplemental volume. We have The Doctors in print. So this is all about the novelizations and the new adventures and stuff like that. So we take a look. Yeah, it covers the Target Books team, Virgin Publishing, and Telos Publishing. Telos Publishing was kind of a fan-based one that did a lot of side stories that expanded on Doctor Who lore. So we have Nigel Robinson, Andrew Skilleter. Oh, I love Andrew Skilleter's artwork. He was like one of the Doctor Who artists during the 80s and 90s when I was like most heavily collecting stuff about the classic series. He did a lot of book covers, a lot of posters, a lot of special artwork for Doctor Who magazine and all kinds of stuff. And he still does a lot of stuff. Yeah, great artist. Love his work. Jeff Cummins, the Target Books team, Virgin Publishing, and Telos Publishing. So you get like little documentaries that kind of cover all different aspects of those various eras of Doctor Who publishing. Very cool. So that's a really neat one to have, especially since, as you know, I've been collecting a lot of the novelizations and other books for quite some time. Next up, we have Doctor Who Monsters. Yeah, you can't talk about Doctor Who without talking about the Rogues Gallery of aliens and monsters, right? Very cool. So here we have, spin it around, I Was a Doctor Who Monster. That's actually a full-blown documentary. I remember when that came out and seeing ads for it in Doctor Who magazine. You can also get that separately. I think you can still get it, actually, on Reeltime Pictures' website as its own standalone disc. Ray Cusick, who is, of course, the designer of the Daleks. Yeah, he's the guy who created that iconic design. Michael Wisher. We get a standalone interview with Michael Wisher, who was not only the original Davros, but was in quite a number of stories as various characters. David Banks, who was, of course, the cyber leader for pretty much the entire 80s era. Just an amazing voice, that guy. He did a lot of stuff about the Cybermen as well and was quite active in the fandom and doing other sort of side media. And then Jack Pitt and Cy Town. That's very cool. What a great collection. And then we have more monsters. Oh, we know that guy. Good old Syl. Nabil Shaban himself. So we have, well, there you go. An interview with Nabil Shaban. We got Christopher Ryan, John Davies, Stephen Thorne, who played a few characters actually. Terry Malloy, who took over as Davros in the 80s. And Stuart Fell. What a wonderful name. He was both a stunt guy. Like, what a great name for a stunt guy. Stuart Fell. Yes, he did. Multiple times on camera and got paid to do so. But he also played a lot of monsters, probably more than anybody else. Like, he was just a legend that nobody ever knew who it was. Because he was either, you know, doing stunts or was in a costume. Then next up, we have a threefer of sort of themed releases. We got The Doctor's Heroes. This one is quite interesting, actually, because, yeah, we have Trevor Martin. That's this fellow here who played the Doctor in 7 Keys to Doomsday. What the heck is that? Some of you may be wondering. Well, that was one of the Doctor Who stage plays. Yeah, they did a number of stage plays over the years. And often they would just star actors from the show as the Doctor, but in that case, he played the Doctor, you know, and he was not on the show. So strictly the stage version. So it's neat that they got an interview with him. Damaris Heyman, who played the White Witch, the Good Witch in The Demons, classic John Pertwee story. Stuart Bevan, David Brierley, who was the other voice of K9. Jeremy Bullock, I know who he is. I'll tell you what else he's done in a second, but who was he in this? Was Hal the Archer and the Time Warrior. Of course. Yes, I know exactly who that is. That's a great story, by the way. The one that introduced the Sontarans and introduced the Time Tunnel titles, like the Slit Scan title. But you guys might know Jeremy Bulloch as Boba Fett. Yes, he was the original Boba Fett. Well, the man in the costume. I guess he was also a stunt guy. But and then finally we have Andrew Hayden Smith. Great stuff. What a terrific collection. I know I'm saying that about all of them, but quite frankly, they're all terrific collections. And you can't have heroes without villains. Our heroes need someone to fight, right? So, on this one, we have a special tribute to Roger Delgado, the original master. Got Ian Colliard, Bernard Archard, David Gooderson, Peter Miles. Peter Miles was in a ton of stuff as well. I mentioned him earlier. He played Nider in Genesis of the Daleks, but was also in a number of other stories. And Julian Glover. Julian Glover, freaking legendary actor. I always thought it was a bit of a coup that they managed to get him in this. He played Scaroth in City of Death, which many consider to be the best story, one of the best Doctor Who stories of all time, but certainly the best one of Graham Williams' era as producer. And they weren't quite done yet. We have heroes and villains, so we've got a nice mix of both here. And there we go. You can probably guess who one of them is. Yeah, so we have Prentice Hancock, Geoffrey Beavers, who was the second Crispy Master, the one who ultimately turned into Anthony Ainley in the Keeper of Troughton, and has actually gone on to play the Master in quite a number of stories in the audio adventures from Big Finish. And then we have Angus Lenny, Shane Rimmer, no relation to Arnold Rimmer, I'm sure, Kai Owen, and Nick Joseph. There we go. That's great. Okay, so that's basically it for the core series of the Doctors, but there's quite a few other supplemental volumes as well, and kind of related. Now, this one I showed in my overview of Season 20, but I'll just quickly show it again here to be thorough. So this is Longleat 83, the special hour-long documentary about the 20th anniversary celebration at Longleat Castle. Great stuff. I love this. The BBC expected 10,000 people a day. They got 30,000. And this documentary is such a great sort of summation of just what an incredible celebration it was, but also how kind of chaotic it was just by how many people showed up. People were coming from literally all over the world. And it's presented by K9 himself, John Leeson. I should mention also, this is one of the few releases that's actually a burned disc. Yeah, all the other ones, the Doctor's ones, are all pressed discs. But some of them are burned discs for some reason. I don't know why. Just cheaper, I guess. Because I guess they can keep them in print that way, too. They can just kind of print them on demand. And then we have a supplemental volume to that. We have Longleat 83, The Lost Footage, which actually has quite a lot of material on it. It's very nice. About 2 hours worth of stuff. And again, a burned disc. This one's pretty full, as you can see. Very nice. Sorry, I don't have a lot of focal range with the macro. Like, look how quick it goes out of focus. Yeah, just enough to show you down on the table there. Next up, now I mentioned this one earlier. There's a special additional interview with Tom Baker conducted by Tom Baker. Yes, Tom Baker interviews himself in Who on Earth is Tom Baker? This you can still get. This is absolutely delightful. It's Tom, I mean, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek with him, interviewing himself, but, that's just kind of Tom being Tom. But he tells all kinds of wonderful stories. This came out around the same time that he did his autobiography, which goes by the same title, and is a wonderful companion piece to that, or just as a standalone documentary. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one a lot. I watched it basically as soon as it came in. And I think this is This is again a burned disc. Yeah, it's about an hour long. So very nice. Then, in addition to documentaries, Reeltime Pictures' first sort of claim to fame was doing fan films and sort of supplemental fiction set in the Doctor Who universe. So here we have the Wartime Chronicles featuring John Levine returning as Sergeant Benton. So we actually get a new adventure with Sergeant Benton, but he gets to be in the starring role in this time around. So there you go, and it even has an introduction by Katie Manning. So how can you go wrong there? Very cool. But this is quite nice because not only does it have Wartime, which is a terrific hour-long special, but it also has the unit reunited, and John Pertwee and Unit live on stage. That's really cool. So that's a real treat for sure, especially for Unit fans. If you love Unit like I do, this is just invaluable. It's great stuff. So you got the Unit reunion, the Unit reunited here, along with the stage show with John Pertwee and Unit, and then you got the movie and related stuff on the first disc there. And these ones, I believe, are burned discs, or pressed discs rather. Yeah, most of these are pressed discs. It's just a few of the standalone documentaries are burned discs. As I say, probably just so they can keep them in print just by doing them on demand. And then this one's notable because it started off as a fan film and then has basically been entered into the official canon. We have Downtime. This one is really cool because it's a sequel to the old Abominable Snowmen stories from the 60s, but also features a reunion of a lot of Doctor Who alumni here. You got Deborah Watling as Victoria, Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier, and then Elizabeth Sladen, of course, as Sarah Jane Smith. Yeah, very cool. So this is an interesting follow-up. It also has Jack Watling as Professor Travers. So this was done, I think, in the 90s, and it's basically a direct sequel to those stories. A direct follow-up takes place, 30 years later or so, and features a lot of familiar faces in it, and quite a lot of bonus material there as well, which you can see on there. You got behind-the-scenes stuff and all kinds of things. So there was also a novelization of that, which was published as part of the official Doctor Who Missing Stories line. So pretty neat. Next up, we have a couple of more recent fan productions that Reeltime put together. Again, kind of expanding on the canon by providing side stories of some familiar characters. We have Nabil Shaban returning as Syl for the first time in like 30 years, almost 40 years, with Syl and the Devil Seeds of Eridor. So it's actually, I think it's a 4-part adventure. So it plays out, it feels much like a Doctor Who adventure, or almost like one of those side stories you'd see in the Doctor Who magazine, like the comic strips. But yeah, I've only watched the first episode of this so far, but a lot of fun, and Nabil is obviously having an absolute blast with it, and tons of special features on here too. So really nice, and I'm pretty sure you can still get this through the Reeltime website. Don't pay like through the nose for it. Just get it straight from Reeltime. There are a lot of third-party sellers out there who will try to rip you off and convince you that it's out of print. Yeah, it's not. I almost fell for that. Just go to the Reeltime website, timetraveltv.com. So Syl and the Devil Seeds of Eridor was done in 2019, and then in 2020, they got Damaris Heyman to come back as the White Witch of Devil's End. Yes, the aforementioned Good Witch from the Demons. Well, this is a story of her character kind of in the twilight of her life trying to find a successor to take over as the White Witch of Devil's End and kind of carry on the tradition as kind of the protector and guardian of the town. So it's a very nice kind of denouement for her character. It's a fairly relaxed story, but wonderful to see her come back one more time. And sadly, she actually passed away just a couple years after doing this. So it's great that we got to see her step into the role of Miss Hawthorne one more time, definitely recommend this one for anyone who is a fan of the Demons, that all-time great Third Doctor story. And there we go. I don't know what the difference is between the two covers here. Oh, one is purple. Oh, one is purple and has the demon characters. Oh, no, they both have the demon characters. I don't know why there's like slightly different covers. I don't know. If you prefer purple or green, you have your choice. Is it purple? Or does it just look purple? No. It's purple. I don't know what the difference is here, other than one's purple and one's green. Is there some significance to that? Maybe I need to watch the rest of the story and find out. Yeah, again, much like the Syl one, I've only watched the first episode. I just kind of wanted to get a taste for them. And then when I have a little more time, I'm going to sit down and probably binge both of them back to back. But yeah, I love these short movies. So this is another 4-parter. I made a mistake when I did the update. I thought that this was like 3 hours long because of the running time. Yeah, 3 hours and 49 minutes. Like, holy crap, it's like a 4-hour long fan film saga. No, it's actually only about 2 hours. They were including the running time of the extras in there. See, with Syl, where is it here? Yeah, with Syl, they actually divided it up. So you have 100 minutes for the show, 60 minutes for the special features. But for here, for some reason, they just combined it all together. Hence my confusion. Last, but most certainly not least, I figure since we're looking at all the compilations of Mythmakers episodes, well, they don't just cover Doctor Who, they also cover other science fiction, such as Blake 7. And as far as I know, this is the only non-Doctor Who compilation of Mythmakers episodes that they put out. Appropriately enough, there are 7 interviews on here. And again, wonderful to see some of them because they feature a lot of actors from the show who passed away quite young. So we have Gareth Thomas, who is, of course, Blake himself. Jan Chappell, who was Callie, Michael Keating, who was Villa, Jacqueline Pierce, Servalan herself. I watched a bit of that one. She's looking absolutely stunning and glamorous as ever. Ugh, what an amazing woman. Stephen Grief, who was, of course, the original Travis. Peter Tuddenham, who was the voices of Aurak, Slave, and what was the other one? Zen, that's, of course, the computer of the Liberator. And Matt Irvine again. Yes, another interview with Matt Irvine, which I don't think is the same as the one on the Doctor's discs. Matt Irvine was, of course, an effects guy who worked on both Doctor Who and Blake 7, and also published some books, well, at least one book, about special effects and stuff like that. So, very cool. And with that, we have reached the end. You made it. And there you have it. Yeah. The entire collection of the Doctors and several associated titles as well. Yeah. Can we put these back on the shelf without all of them falling everywhere? Let's... No. Well, I'm going to pick these all up off the floor and put them back on the shelf. And meanwhile, I'll see you next time. So until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara.